In this video, I share 6 ways how I use ChatGPT to study Chinese and support my daily study routine. All examples I'll share in this video are from my real Chinese practice and are not made specifically for this video. With that said, let's get started. ChatGPT is great for generating dialogues. Until now, and for several years, I've been using ChinesePod, which has a large library of episodes. Often I want to learn a specific word, and I'll look for a specific dialogue where that word appears. And since ChinesePod has a large library of episodes, I often find it, but by no means always. And in these cases, when there is no dialogue or the dialogue is at the wrong level, it's a great way to just go to ChatGPT and generate the dialogue there. To share with you one of my recent examples, a few days ago I wanted to learn the word 停止 or to stop. And ChinesePod has that word, but it has only upper, intermediate or advanced level dialogues. And those dialogues are not only difficult but also long. And I wanted a simpler, shorter dialogue with that word, such as an elementary or intermediate level. And that just wasn't around. So then I just went to ChatGPT and asked it to make a dialogue with 停止 for me. By the way, one method to get the right level of difficulty in your dialogue is to tell ChatGPT to use a specific level of HSK, and then you'll get exactly the level of vocabulary that you want to learn. During my Chinese practice, I usually just fill 1 or 2 pages in my notebook here, and quite often you have some space left at the end of a dialogue, and I'll fill that with some additional sample sentences that use exactly the keywords that I want to use of that day. And ChatGPT is another great way to get sample sentences with a specific word. And I also did that in my example with 停止. Now let's go down one level from the sentence to the word. When it comes to Chinese vocabulary, and also Japanese and Korean for that matter, they are often made up out of 2 Chinese characters, which have their own individual meaning. And mostly I just use Pleco or Google Translate to easily look up the meaning of each of these characters. But sometimes it can happen that both of these characters have a meaning that really doesn't make sense to then become that combined word. One very recent example from my studies is the word 单程, which means one way, as in a one-way ticket. And the individual characters of this word mean one and then procedure, if you just go after Google Translate. And that's really not a good explanation for why these 2 characters mean a one-way, as in one-way ticket. And in these cases, it can be very helpful to just check ChatGPT and ask for an explanation why those characters make up that word and what their meaning is in the context of a specific word. Now, let's go down even one more level and look at individual characters. As it happens, Chinese characters are built out of components, sometimes also known as radicals, which have their own meaning or role inside of a character also. If you try to better understand the components to remember and learn characters, ChatGPT might be an easy place to start because it can also give you clues about the components. But it makes mistakes, as I found out, for example, a few days ago with the example 钥匙, which means a key. And so for looking up components, it's still much better to use the Outliers dictionary in Pleco, which has nothing to do with AI, but it's just one of my absolute favorite resources to learn Chinese. Okay, now that we went from dialogue to sentence, word, and character, we can also look at placing several things next to each other. For example, you can compare 2 Chinese words or 2 characters. And I recently did that with the 2 words 室友 and 同事, which both mean roommate, but in different contexts. This kind of comparison is less relevant when you learn a language that is closely related to your native language. Like my native tongue is German and I speak English to you now. And these languages are so similar that the words usually have an equivalent in the other language. But a language like Chinese, Japanese, or other languages that are not European languages have much more diversity in meaning between words. So there might not be a one-to-one translation, and then these comparisons can be extremely useful. A last fun way to use ChatGPT to learn Chinese is to get inspiration. And my example here is that I have a Chinese girlfriend, and recently I wanted to look up different ways how I could call her. And that's not something you can easily find in a textbook. You might find it in Chinese TV dramas, but those are most often quite difficult to understand for beginners. So in that case, it can make sense to just ask ChatGPT. And you ask, for example, for 5 nicknames for your girlfriend. Or then when I wasn't satisfied, I give some more considerations I want ChatGPT to consider. And after several iterations, I could finally get what I wanted and what I was looking for in a way that otherwise I would have a lot of trouble finding it with just Google. You have to be careful with this though. As my last example shows, when you give too narrow restrictions, like for example, I suggested that it should give me nicknames that start with the letter C, then ChatGPT just created nonsense words that don't really exist because the constraints were too narrow, and ChatGPT thought it's more important to begin the words with the letter C than actually follow the rules of the language. So in these kind of corner cases, you have to be careful, but otherwise it's a fun way to also learn new words. All right, so these were just 6 ways of using ChatGPT to learn Chinese that I used recently, but there are of course many more. One thing that comes to my mind is, for example, you can send it your text and ask it to correct it, or now you can even give it the voice input. Another thing you could do is ask ChatGPT to act as your teacher or a Chinese-speaking friend, and then you chat with that AI as if it were your language exchange buddy. So, did you ever use ChatGPT to learn Chinese or any other language? I'd love to hear about it down below in the comments. And that's it for this time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.